Hello there, everyone. I'm Sandy Anastasi, psychic channel, intuitive astrologer, and soul coach. I'm here with my video blog, my editorial that I do every month, and I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for coming by to listen to my thoughts. Folks, as you all know, I canceled my psychic cruise that was supposed to be in April last January. I had no idea why I needed to cancel that cruise. I only had an inner pressure. That inner pressure said, it's not a good thing to go on your psychic cruise at this time. It felt like a sort of inner resistance. It was a tendency towards negativity about the entire cruise that didn't make sense. You see, we were scheduled to visit some ports that I'd never been to before, and believe me, I've been all over. I love to travel. So this cruise was going to some new ports, so for me that was a really big thing. That was a personal reason to go. I really did want to go. And yet, when I pushed myself into looking at all of those wonderful destinations online, I just couldn't even get excited about them. I kept feeling like I was just too busy to get to it. But even when I made time, and even when I sat down and I focused on the things that I needed to do to create the onboard itinerary, my mind turned to soup. I couldn't focus. I kept putting the cruise out of my mind. I literally forgot it. I just didn't want to think about it. The signs, you see, were all there. In every way, my higher self and my guides were saying, Sandy, don't go on this cruise. I wasn't getting the message, at least not the whole thing. But you see, I was getting the message that said don't go. And yet I didn't want to address it. You see, I usually am very, very good at following those inner feelings religiously, which is why things generally work so smoothly in my life. But this time, I didn't follow what I teach my students to do because this message was so hard to listen to. Our psychic cruise this year involved so many other people. They'd registered for the cruise almost a year before. They were excited about it. They had booked airfare to Tampa, where the cruise left from. They'd booked their vacations a year ahead of time, some of them even more than that. They'd booked airfare to Tampa. They'd booked hotels, coming in a day or so early to meet with people that they were having a reunion with. Oh, there was just so much that was going on relative to this cruise, and I knew that my canceling the cruise was going to affect all of those people. For returning cruisers, the cruise is an opportunity for a reunion with people they only get to see once a year and really feel close to. This whole thing made it so difficult. How could I do that to them? How could I take that cruise away from them? How could I cancel? Too many people were involved. So I hesitated and I put it off and I ignored those feelings. But then I remembered the mistake that I'd made in my first marriage many, many years ago. Just as with the cruise, I had all of those same feelings. I had warnings. But because so many guests were scheduled to come to the wedding, I didn't cancel and I went through with it. As a result, I endured 6 years of a very difficult and very unfortunate marriage before I finally paid attention to that inner voice still talking to me and left. So, you see, when the time came to make full payments in January, I chose to announce to my psychic cruise guests that the cruise was canceled so that they would be able to get their money back or apply it to another cruise or another vacation. At least they wouldn't have lost everything. So, I canceled the cruise on my end. I chose to announce to everyone that it was canceled. And I told them they could still go, and indeed some still did, because it was a lovely itinerary. But the psychic part of the cruise, my part of the cruise, didn't happen. Most of the cruisers, I noticed, canceled. They were thinking that if Sandy, the psychic channel, wasn't going, there must be good reason to avoid that cruise. Well, I still wasn't getting any concrete reasons to cancel. Just those nebulous but obvious feelings. So I waited to see what would transpire. I've learned over the years not to jump to conclusions when these kinds of impressions grab me. Instead, I wait. I thought, if there's going to be a major calamity, I would have had a much more intense feeling. I would have had an inner need to inform everyone not to go. I didn't feel that kind of feeling. My feelings were far more subtle. Evidently, whatever was going to transpire didn't affect the ship. Just me and perhaps other important members of my team. So I stepped back emotionally and I waited. I decided to recount this situation right here in this editorial blog. I want you folks to understand how it feels to feel these feelings, because you all get them. You see, I was encountering inner turmoil that I am sure is familiar to you. I felt a powerful need to take action, but I didn't know why. And frankly, I wasn't really sure what action to take. All of us often find ourselves in these kinds of situations. But because we don't have solid guarantees, solid guidance that tells us exactly what we should do and why, we push against our feelings, and then we end up in a situation that we don't want to be in, like me and my first marriage. Our guides don't always give us the whys or the hows. They most often give us the feelings. But when we follow the feelings, follow those impressions, we can live healthy and happy lives. We really do. It makes our lives better. When we don't follow those feelings, our life usually becomes unhappy and filled with a whole lot of turmoil. I know that you're waiting to hear what transpired in April, when I should have been on our psychic cruise. In fact, when all of our cruises should have been on our psychic cruise. And it turned out that there were many, many things that happened in April that gave good reason for people, including myself, to stay ashore. One reason my guides didn't define what the problem was is because there were so many different things. It was easier to send me, "Don't go," than to send me the laundry list of all of the things in my world and everyone else's that were going to become big problems if I wasn't home. The two biggest things were both health issues, at least on my part. First, my onboard cruise director ended up undergoing major surgery that week, so she would have had to stay home. And of course, that would have really crippled my activities on the cruise. Second, my husband also had major surgery, and that was totally unexpected. He had a shoulder transplant or change. He started with a one kind of shoulder replacement and it didn't work. It broke down and they had to replace it a second time. So that was a totally unexpected surgery. And he needed a lot of help at home. So that would have happened exactly when I was on the cruise. That would have been bad news. If I wasn't there, there would have been an enormous amount of difficulty at home. Also, it removed a lot of stress from my friend, that cruise director, who didn't have to worry about trying to manage the cruise from a hospital bed. Third, without my cruise director present, the cruise itself would have been very difficult for me to manage, at least in a way that met everyone's expectations. And last, but certainly not least, my personal assistant, whom you all know to be an enormous support in all that I do, got sick too. What a week it would have been. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I heard so many stories from other people on the cruise of things that were happening in their own lives that week. And of course, I also had some stories from people who did alternate vacations and had absolutely wonderful times. So you see, the reason for the nebulous feeling of don't go is because nothing was going to happen to the ship. Nothing was going to happen to me. But if I went, there would have been a great deal of unpleasantness in both my life and the lives of many of the people who would have gone, and even others who remained at home behind. Many benefits have come from this to me as well. The psychic cruise will be rescheduled, and it will be better than ever next year. And we're also considering a land-based reunion. Look for more information on both of those things coming up soon on my website, www.sandyanastasi.com. So we did a lot of mental processing that really has produced a lot of nice results. I wanted to share this little scenario with you all because many folks ignore their intuition. Perhaps now you're going to pay a little bit more attention to your own. My students and clients seem to think that I know everything, and they think that's why things in my life usually flow. It's not so much I know everything. My guides don't give me it all. It's the gift of following the flow of my feelings that allows me to stay in such constant touch with my guides and my higher self. It's the self-trust that allows me to be clear on my feelings. And even those nebulous ones that are hard to pin down, and to act on them without jumping to conclusions that could be in error. So I act, but then I step back. I don't draw conclusions. Feelings are nebulous because your guides have too much going on to pinpoint a specific. But if you follow the feeling and then step back, you always do find out what's going on eventually. And you're in a better place because you followed those feelings. I just love the psychic world. It's the world I live in. I walk through life with a foot in the psychic world and a foot in the real physical world that everyone else seems to live mostly in. And I love being a member of both worlds. I think we should all be. It's a never-ending delight filled with constant discovery, self-growth, and constant personal evolution. Thanks for coming by and listening to my story. And I'll be back next month with another one for you. Meanwhile, if you'd like to go over to my website and find out about all of my classes, my appearances, my online and in-person classes, my audio tape MP3 VIP section, there's just so much to learn because I love to teach. My website is www.sandyanastasi.com. I look forward to hearing more from you, and I'd love to hear your stories too. Thank you. Goodbye for now.